On the seventh night, I returned to the makeshift shelter, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was empty. The blankets were cold, the fire a pile of dying embers. A cold dread, sharper than any winter wind, gripped me. Had she succumbed to her wounds? Had she simply left? Then a voice, smooth as polished obsidian, spoke from the shadows. "Do not fear, healer." I spun around. A woman stepped into the lantern light. She was tall, regal, her copper skin seeming to glow from within. Her hair wasn't just red, it was a cascade of living flame tumbling down her back. Though she wore a simple robe from my own stores, she carried herself with the poise of a queen. But it was her eyes that stole my breath. They were the same molten gold and emerald I had seen in the drake's gaze. "Lysandra," I whispered, the name a question and a prayer. She nodded, and tiny, harmless embers danced in her hair with the movement. "This is my mother's gift," she explained, her voice a low hum. "To walk between forms. Though in my weakened state, I may be trapped this way for some time." Despite her human appearance, there was nothing human about the way she studied me. Her every movement was fluid, a blend of cautious grace and predatory stillness. "You saved my life," she said, the words simple yet carrying the weight of centuries. "No human has shown me kindness in 3 centuries." My jaw must have dropped. 3 centuries? I couldn't hide my shock. "How old are you?" A rare, fleeting smile touched her lips. "We measure time differently, alien of the wildwood." The days that followed blurred into weeks. Lysandra slowly regained her strength, but she remained in her human form. She told me of her home, the Ashen Court, a fortress carved into the heart of a volcano. She spoke of her cousin, Vrax, his betrayal, the poison that had nearly claimed her life, and his seizure of her throne. It was a story of power, treachery, and loss, told with a quiet dignity that belied the fire in her heart. In turn, I shared my own small world with her. I told her of my village, of my life as an outcast healer, tolerated but never truly accepted. I spoke of my grandmother, the woman who had taught me everything, whose lessons were the bedrock of my life. She believed that every creature deserves compassion, I explained one evening as we shared a simple meal of roasted roots and herbs. Lysandra watched me, her gaze impossibly deep. "Even monsters?" she asked. I met her gaze without hesitation. "There are no monsters," I replied softly. "Only beings we don't understand." In that moment, our hands touched across the rough-hewn table. A warmth spread through me, a gentle heat that had nothing to do with her fire-kin nature and everything to do with the connection sparking between us. Later that night, beneath a tapestry of stars that seemed to shine just for us, our first kiss was a revelation. It tasted of honey from the wild bees and the comforting scent of wood smoke from our fire. It felt forbidden, impossible, and yet utterly inevitable. We were so lost in our own world, a world where a healer and a dragon could find solace, that we didn't notice him. We didn't see the village hunter watching from the dark edge of the forest. We didn't hear his footsteps as he turned and ran, his heart full of fear and his mind set on spreading the word. The fire witch had bewitched their healer. The torches came at midnight. A mob of 30 villagers, their faces grim in the flickering light, led by Elder Thomas. They brandished pitchforks and dusty ancient swords pulled from attics and forgotten chests. "Step away from the demon, Elian!" Thomas shouted, his voice cracking with righteous fury. "She's clouded your mind!" I didn't hesitate. I stood before Lysandra, a shield of flesh and bone against their hatred. "She's done nothing to harm any of you," I yelled back, my voice raw. "She's firekin!" another voice screamed from the crowd. "They burned my father's farm 3 summers past." Lysandra stepped forward, her regal calm a stark contrast to their chaotic anger. I am not responsible for all actions of my kind, she stated, her voice ringing with authority. Just as Elian is not responsible for your ignorance. The elder raised his torch higher, his face a mask of conviction. Bind them both. The witch will burn, and the traitor will watch. What happened next would become a legend whispered by fireplaces for generations. As two men surged forward, Lysandra's eyes blazed with an inner fire. She moved in front of me, a protective gesture that mirrored my own. You will not touch him. The ground itself trembled. Though she was still too weak to fully transform, the very air around her shimmered with intense heat. From her shoulders, magnificent translucent wings of pure flame unfurled, painting the dark forest in hues of orange and gold. The villagers stumbled back, their shouts turning to gasps of terror. "Run!" I whispered, grabbing her hand, the heat from her skin a familiar comfort. "Now!" We plunged into the depths of the wildwood as arrows whistled past our heads, thudding into the ancient trees around us. For days we traveled, pushing deeper into the unclaimed territories that lay between the human kingdoms. With every hardship, every shared danger, our bond deepened. In the quiet moments, beneath the canopies of ancient trees, we explored each other with gentle hands and whispered promises, our two worlds merging into one. I never expected this, Lysandra confessed one night, her head resting on my chest, her fiery hair a stark contrast against my plain tunic. To feel so much for a human. I smiled, tracing the luminous, vein-like patterns that appeared on her skin when she was content, a beautiful, secret script only I could read. And I never thought I'd fall in love with a sovereign. But our sanctuary was fragile. Vrax's assassins found us at dawn. They weren't human. They were twisted firekin, their eyes devoid of light, their hands clutching blades of black obsidian. In the ensuing chaos, I proved I was more than just a healer. My knowledge of herbs became a weapon as I threw packets of dried leaves into the fire, creating thick, blinding smoke that choked our attackers. Beside me, Lysandra's growing strength was a deadly dance. She moved with a lethal precision, her every strike finding its mark. We fought back to back, a desperate synchronized ballet of survival. We emerged wounded, bleeding, but alive. The fight had proven one thing: we could run no further. Vrax's assassins would hunt us to the ends of the earth, and my own people wanted me dead. Both human and firekin sought our blood. Leaning against a moss-covered boulder, tending to a gash on her arm, Lysandra looked at me, her expression grim. There's only one place left to go, she said, her voice heavy with resolve. We must return to the Ashen Court. Spring came slowly to Aldermere, winter's grip reluctant to release the land. Nico moved through his days mechanically, mixing tinctures and setting bones with skilled hands that worked independently of his distracted mind. The nights were worse, filled with dreams of soaring through cloud-strewn skies, feeling the rush of wind beneath wings he didn't possess. The dragon scale he kept remained warm against his skin, a constant reminder that madness and miracles sometimes shared the same face. "You're not yourself lately," observed Matron Elda, the village baker, as she collected her rheumatism remedy. "A young man needs more than plants and potions for company." Nico offered a practiced smile. "The spring brings many patients. I'm only tired." But exhaustion didn't explain why he found himself climbing to the ruins each evening, scanning empty skies until stars emerged. It didn't explain why ordinary life felt hollow now, as if he'd glimpsed something magnificent that had permanently altered his perception of the world. In the Ember-scale domain, beyond the veil separating mortal realms from ancient ones, Seraphina faced trials of a different nature. "Consorting with humans," hissed Lord Kazan, her cousin, his scales gleaming obsidian in the council chamber's light. "Have you forgotten what they did to the Western Clutch? Or do you simply not care about our kind's survival? The chamber, carved into the living mountain, echoed with disapproving rumbles. Seraphina lifted her head, firelight dancing across her crimson scales. I would have died without him. Then perhaps you should have, Kazan replied, smoke curling from his nostrils. Better than bringing human attention to our sanctuary. Their matriarch, ancient Perina, silenced them with a thunderous beat of her wings. Enough. Seraphina will be watched, but not condemned. The human showed mercy. This is unexpected. Later, in her cavern, Seraphina curled around her treasures, remnants of civilizations long turned to dust. Unlike her kin, she had always been fascinated by human resilience, their brief lives burning so brightly. But Nico was different. His gentle hands had tended her wounds without trembling. His voice had kept loneliness at bay. She touched the empty space in her scale pattern where one had fallen. A connection forged, impossible to sever. Her decision came with the season's first thunderstorm. In Aldermere, the annual spring festival transformed the sleepy village into a riot of color and sound. For once, Nico allowed himself to be dragged into the celebration by eager children who adored his tricks with harmless flames and colored smoke. He felt her before he saw her. The scale against his chest flared with sudden heat. His gaze was drawn like a lodestone to true north. He turned, and the crowd seemed to part like a wave around a stone. She stood beneath garlands of spring flowers, impossibly out of place, yet somehow belonging entirely to the moment. Silver hair cascaded down her back, catching lantern light like liquid moonlight. Her dress, the deep red of embers, swirled about her as she moved. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart. Amber gold, ancient and familiar, regarding him with unmistakable recognition. When she smiled, the world narrowed to a single point. "Hello, healer," she said, her voice melodic yet carrying undertones that resonated in his bones. Her 5 slender fingers reached toward him, hesitating just short of touch. "You're not," Nico began, aware of curious onlookers. "Human?" Her smile deepened. "Not entirely. But neither am I a stranger." As night fell and villagers danced around bonfires, they found themselves at the festival's edge, words tumbling between them. She called herself Tyla now, simpler for human tongues than her true name. "Why return?" he finally asked, touching the scale beneath his shirt. "Because you speak to your plants as if they understand, because you showed kindness when wisdom demanded fear." Her fingers brushed his cheek, warm as summer stone. "Because when I flew away, I left something essential behind." Beyond the firelight, neither of them noticed the narrowed eyes of the king's huntmaster, whose attention had been caught by the woman's silver hair and impossible grace. Nor did they see the shadow that moved unnaturally against the wind, watching with reptilian patience as 2 worlds edged closer to collision. Dawn found them in Nico's garden, dew glistening on herbs as Tyla traced her fingers over his careful plantings. Sleep had eluded them both, too many questions crowding the night. "Your human form," Nico said, watching her examine a flowering foxglove. "Is it real?" Taylor's laugh shimmered like heat over stone. "As real as your healer's hands? Ancient magic allows the shifting of forms, though few of my kind bother to learn the art anymore." She plucked a petal, rolling it between her fingers. "It requires sacrifice, power for presence. I am smaller here, contained, but I feel things differently." Her gaze lifted to his. More intensely. The unspoken hung between them, magnetic and dangerous. Villagers whispered about the beautiful stranger who had appeared at the festival. Some claimed she was a noble's daughter, others a foreign emissary. Only Nico knew the truth that would send them fleeing in terror. 3 days of cautious joy passed before the hunters came. They arrived at midday, royal insignia gleaming on their breastplates. Their leader, Commander Drace, had built his reputation on tracking and killing unnatural creatures that threatened the kingdom's borders. "A curious report reached us," Drace announced to the gathered villagers. "A woman with eyes like a beast and unexplainable abilities." His gaze swept the crowd. "The king rewards those who help identify threats to the realm." Nico felt Tyla stiffen beside him, her human disguise suddenly feeling fragile. That night, they fled to the ruins where they had first met. Ancient stones offered temporary sanctuary, familiar in their weathered solitude. "They'll hunt us both now," Nico said, gathering what supplies he could carry. "My association makes me complicit." Tyla watched him with those impossible eyes. "I can return to my form and fly us both to the mountains. Where your clan waits, the ones who despise humans?" He smiled grimly. "Trading one death for another seems poor strategy." Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then building to a torrent that matched their uncertainty. In the shadow of fallen columns, they huddled together for warmth. "Why did you really come back?" Nico whispered against her hair, silver strands twining around his fingers like living silk. Tayla's hands found his face in the darkness, mapping features she had memorized in another form. Dragons live centuries, watching civilizations rise and crumble like sandcastles. We pride ourselves on detachment. Her voice caught. "But you spoke to me of loneliness as if naming my oldest companion. You tended wounds not just of body but of spirit." Their lips met as lightning split the sky, illuminating the ruins in harsh white light before plunging them back into darkness. Her skin burned beneath his touch, a heat that should have warned him away, but instead pulled him closer. His healer's hands, accustomed to mending, now explored with reverent wonder. "This is forbidden," she breathed against his mouth, "in both our worlds." "Then we'll make our own," Nico answered, pressing his forehead to hers. They came together as the storm raged, human and dragon, earth and fire, finding in each other's arms a sanctuary more secure than stone walls. When they finally lay entwined, the rain had gentled to a whisper. But their reprieve was brief. At first light, Tyla stiffened, senses far keener than human perception detecting what Nico could not. "They're coming," she said simply. "Not just hunters. My cousin Kazan has crossed the veil. He would rather see me dead than dilute our bloodline with human taint." Nico reached for the scale he always carried, warm against his skin. "Then we face them together." Her smile was fierce and sad. "Two worlds conspire to part us. Perhaps some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed. Or perhaps," Nico countered, taking her hands in his, "some boundaries exist only to test those brave enough to transcend them." Outside, hounds bayed in the distance as thunder rumbled from cloudless skies, the approach of dragon and hunter alike, converging on the ruins where a forbidden love had taken root among ancient stones. What will happen to Nico and Tayla? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more. The temple ruins were more than just crumbling stone. They held secrets, forgotten passages leading into the earth. I guided Tayla down a broken staircase into a hidden chamber. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling above, painting shifting patterns across ancient mosaic floors. The images showed gods so old their names were lost to time. "The old ones built deeply," I whispered, the space feeling sacred, ancient. "My mother showed me this place. She said it was a sanctuary where worlds once touched. From the world above, we heard them, the shouts of hunters, the baying of hounds. They were searching for us. But then, a new presence washed over the chamber, cold and electric. It was him, Kazan." Tyla began to pace, her energy crackling like a storm about to break. "He can't manifest physically in this realm without drawing significant attention," she said, her voice tight. "But his influence, It stretches across the boundary. He'll bend human minds to his purpose. My eyes were drawn to the carvings that circled the chamber. They depicted humans and dragons, not fighting, but intertwined in what looked like ceremonies. Maybe, I said, a thought sparking. Our situation isn't without precedent. Tayla's fingers traced the weathered stone, her breath catching. The bond of embers, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's a legend among my kind. It speaks of rare moments when dragons and humans shared their very essence, becoming connected beyond any physical form. What does that mean exactly? I asked. She turned to me, her eyes shining in the dim light. It means a choice, Nico. A dragon can share her fire, her magic, her lifespan. But the human must sacrifice something equally precious. I didn't even hesitate. What would I have to sacrifice? Her hand gently settled over my heart, a soft weight against my chest. Ordinary life, she said softly. The comfort of belonging solely to the human world. Once bonded, you would walk between realms, never fully a part of either. A horn blast echoed from outside, sharp and close. The hunters were closing in. At the same moment, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. Kazan's power was seeping through the stones like a supernatural frost. They're hurting us, I realized, the pieces clicking into place. Your cousin is manipulating Drace's forces. Tayla nodded grimly. Together, they'll drive us to the boundary lands. There, both of them can attack us without violating the ancient laws. Time was slipping away. We strategized, searching for any escape route, our hands staying linked, a silent, constant reassurance. In the quiet moments between whispered plans, we stole kisses that burned with a desperate urgency, each one feeling like it could be our last. When true night finally fell, we made our move. Tayla partially shifted, her human form now armored with shimmering scales, amber fire dancing in her palms. I clutched the potions I had made, smoke bombs, blinding powders, and healing drafts for the wounds we knew were coming. We emerged from the temple into a star-filled darkness. For one beautiful, fleeting moment, it felt like we were free. Then arrows whistled through the air, forcing us to dive for cover. There! A hunter shouted, his torchlight catching the silver of Tayla's hair. We ran. The forest became a blur of dark shapes around us. I led her through hidden paths I knew from gathering herbs, but there were too many of them. They knew the terrain. Step by step, they forced us toward the ancient boundary stones that marked the very edge of the mortal realm. They're succeeding, Tayla gasped as we paused behind a massive oak tree to catch our breath. We're almost at the veil. Overhead, the clouds gathered with an unnatural speed, swirling in patterns too deliberate to be a simple storm. Kazan's influence was growing stronger with every step we took toward the boundary. Finally, we were cornered. Trapped among the towering standing stones, we faced Commander Drace's men on one side and the churning, angry sky of Kazan's rage on the other. There's no more running, I said, my hand instinctively going to the dragon scale on my chest. It was pulsing now, like a second heart beating in time with my own. Tayla caught my face between her hands, her gaze intense and searching. The bond of embers. It's our only chance. Her eyes held mine. But it must be freely chosen, fully understood. You would share my centuries, my power, my exile. I looked back at her, the choice already made. And you would share my mortality, my connection to this earth, I finished for her. Neither fully dragon nor human, but something new. The first hunters broke through the tree line, weapons raised. Above us, the clouds parted to reveal the gleam of black scales as Kazan circled, waiting for them to drive Tayla across the boundary. I choose you, I said, the words simple and absolute. Whatever comes after. A fierce, tender smile broke across Tayla's face. As I choose you. She pressed her forehead to mine, and the scale between us flared with a sudden brilliant light. Ancient words in the dragon tongue spilled from her lips as the world erupted into chaos, hunters charging, Kazan diving, the boundary between our realms thinning until it was like translucent silk. Fire and earth, mortal and eternal, we reached across an impossible divide, toward a future neither of our worlds could have ever imagined. An explosion of light erupted from the space between us. The dragon scale at my chest dissolved, sinking into my skin like liquid fire. It was a wave of both pain and ecstasy as ancient magic rewrote the very fabric of my being. Taylor's hands, pressed against mine, began to shimmer, her human fingers interlaced with phantom claws. Commander Drace and his men faltered, shielding their eyes from the blinding light. "Witchcraft!" he shouted, but his voice was laced with a new uncertainty. Above, Kazan's roar of rage split the night as he recognized the ritual. "Abomination!" The obsidian dragon dove, trying to stop the bond, but he was too late. The magic crested and broke over us. When the light cleared, where two had stood, something new remained. Taylor was still in her human form, but now surrounded by a shimmering aura of transparent scales and wings. And me? I was transformed. My eyes glowed with amber dragon fire, and when I moved, you could see the faint pattern of scales just beneath my skin. "Impossible," one of the hunters whispered, lowering his bow. Kazan hovered at the boundary, smoke billowing from his nostrils. "You have betrayed our kind, Seraphina. The Ember Scale line will continue stronger for this change," Tyla interrupted, her voice now carrying a dual harmony, both human and dragon. "Look around you, cousin. Do you not recognize these stones? This was once a place of meeting, not division." The carvings from the temple were echoed here in the arrangement of the boundary stones, dragons and humans in harmony. Suddenly remembering himself, Drace notched an arrow and let it fly straight at Tyla. I moved with a speed I didn't know I possessed, my hand snapping up to catch the shaft in mid-air. When I closed my fist, the arrow burst into flame. "Enough," I said, my voice carrying a new, unshakable authority. "This ends tonight." What followed wasn't a battle. As dawn approached, exhaustion and wonder replaced the bloodlust. The hunters listened, truly listened, as Tyla spoke of our shared history, of how our kinds once worked together before fear and greed tore us apart. Kazan remained at the boundary, his emotions visible in the shifting of his massive scales. "The matriarch will never accept this," he warned. "Then we will give her reason to reconsider," Tyla replied calmly. "Beginning with the truth. Dragons need humans as much as humans need dragons. Our isolation has cost us both." As the sunrise painted the sky, an uneasy truce was formed. Drace agreed to report that the creature he was hunting was a misidentification. Kazan reluctantly consented to carry the news of our bond back to his clan.